So, guys, today with me we've got my friend and colleague Matt Cronin, also ironically my neighbor. We both live in the small town of Moraga, California, here in Northern California. And Matt, really glad that you're here with us today. We're going to talk about Paul Annacone and Roger Federer is going to be the first question, but we're also going to go ahead and open this up to other questions from you guys out there. And again, want to make sure that if you've got a question already that you want to ask me or Matt, go ahead and type it into the GoToWebinar control panel question area there. We'll get some questions loaded up for Matt. But Matt, hey man, thank you for spending some time with us today. Matt, you there with us? Did I lose you already?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Well, I just did a little intro on you, Matt, and just glad that you're with us today, and thanks for spending this time with us.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
So let me do a little formal introduction on Matt. Some of you may know he's recently published a book titled Epic. It's a book about the tennis season with John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg. What was that? Was that 1980?
That was 1980, exactly.
1980. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was clearly they played before that, but that was the big summer where they had the famous tiebreaker at Wimbledon. Borg wins the five-setter that most people have seen and remember, and then McEnroe comes back and knocks off Borg in the U.S. Open final in another brilliant five-setter. So it sort of tracks their careers, their upbringings, people they played, the era, the culture, the politics, but it carries both those matches all the way to the end of the book, and it was definitely a fun time doing it.
Well, I've read the book, and it's it's just a great book. It is so much fun to read that, and for me, a guy who's been involved in tennis for so long, it's so much fun to be able to read these books and go back and really, it's just such a great slice of history, or just such a great slice in the history of the game, and just you really did a great job. So congrats on that, Matt. And you're also you spend a lot of time at tennisreporters.net, which you're a co-founder of. I know you do a lot of writing. I've only given you a few of the places where you're contributing, but foxsports.com, all the Grand Slam websites, many more publications, and I guess on the online radio I did not put the Australian on. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and how do we find you during the Grand Slams on the online radio broadcast?
Well, you can all the online radio broadcasts of the Grand Slams. You just go to their official websites, and there's a way to click on and just listen to the radio. If you're actually in Melbourne, Australia, they have a radio station. They're actually a pretty big one that picks it all up. So if you just happen to be around there, you can turn it on in the car. It's the same case with Wimbledon. And then actually U.S. Open this year got picked up by Sirius, which is nice. So any of the Grand Slam websites, you can go on there and click on it, and you can listen to it. You can follow me on Twitter. You can always find me through Tennis Reporters. Everything I write or whatever I do is there. So hopefully, as I was telling Brent before, I think I'm going to be in Australia about 3 weeks, and as much as I love being home during the fall, I'm kind of itching to get back on tour right now and into the sunshine, of course, again in the summer.
That's right.
Which is possibly more important.
Well, you are definitely a prolific tweeter. I got to believe that you're the number one, kind of news related or tennis news related Twitter account out there, and you really do a great job. I mean, you're pumping out 12, 15, 20, 25 tweets a day, even if nothing's going on, and your stuff is so good. It's always worth clicking on and seeing where it takes us. And so guys, if you're on Twitter right now and you hear something that really kind of gets you, that you want to tweet out there to your tweets, would really appreciate it if you do so. Use my hashtag WebTennis, and also Matt's, which is Tennis Reporters, hashtag sign and then Tennis Reporters. So Matt, let's get into it. I want to talk to you about Paul Annacone and Roger Federer. And, the last few weeks with Federer have been just so much fun. And, I was talking to some guys, probably 6 months ago, and they're talking about Djokovic and all this, and they're talking about Rafa and that, and kind of what's going to shake out, and I just sort of just kind of loosely said, I think in a couple of years, Federer is going to be early 30s. I think he's going to still keep winning Grand Slams, and I think Rafa's going to be done or almost done, and Djokovic maybe there too, and that was all based on style of play and just kind of the way that Fed plays the game. Um, is that? I mean, are we starting to see something like that, or is Paul Annacone have that kind of influence on Roger, or is it something totally different than we're seeing in terms of their relationship in this coaching deal?
Well, I talked to Brent. I told you this off the air, but Paul started coaching Roger actually in the summer of 2010. It was just after Wimbledon. And I would say the first 4 or 5 months, I'm going to even say 6 or 7, it didn't completely click. Roger is a very loyal person, and he trusts people he trusts, and he knows the game well, and he pays attention to what's going on. He knows the coaches, he knows the industry, everything. So he was well aware of Paul's reputation. Obviously, Annacone did great work with Pete Sampras over the years, brought him to his last Grand Slam title in 2002. But the thing is, the Sampras is a much different player than Federer is. So Annacone knew going in that he had to be extremely patient, and with someone as smart as Federer, he couldn't just go in there and break him down. He pretty much had to say, okay, here's the guy with arguably the greatest game of all time. He's going into the twilight of his career, which doesn't mean it's a bad twilight, but it's not a phase of his career where he's going to be able to outrun everyone. So what is he doing right, and what few things can he improve to get better? And I really fundamentally believe if you look at what Paul did with him, essentially, and they're not huge changes, they might be small and subtle, but he convinced him that he should be taking his backhand on the rise more. And I think you saw that a lot this year, even though he took some losses, that he was actually attempting to do that he could actually flatten out backhands down the line, and that foes wouldn't be able to pick on the backhand so much with the inside-out forehand and the result of that. And that actually, even though he was very much of a serve and volleyer, let's not forget, at the beginning of his career, 2002, 2003, you could see Roger coming up to net a lot more, that he began to trust his instincts at the net. So if you look at his recent streak, if you look at Basel, then Paris-Bercy, the Masters 1000, then ATP Finals, at least to me, watching Roger play, I could see he had the confidence to attack with the backhand off the return, which is huge against some of the grinders. He really believed that when he hit the approach shot that he'd be able to cover the net more. So he believed that he could be the dictating, attacking player. And look, I don't want to overstate it because we all know if you look at Federer's record, Brent, that the guy's always been an excellent indoor player. Hands down has been a good one. But I do think now, and you see Paul is pretty much the guy in the chair. It's not Severin Luthi anymore, who's the Swiss Davis Cup captain who Federer's been working on and off with for years. You see Paul there. You could see Roger look over. You could see him trust him more. And now I think, Brent, I don't know if he's going to win multiple slams. And I definitively think that 3 out of 5 set matches outdoors are a lot different than 2 out of 3 indoors. But without a doubt, now Federer goes into the Australian Open with, Rafa's been playing terribly at times, I think, this fall. Djokovic is clearly tired and exhausted. You've got to at least say that Federer's top 3 favorites going into that tournament. And if you told me that after the U.S. Open this year and I didn't see his fall run, I would have probably said, no, stick him at 4. Murray is heads above him. So I think the progress has been clear to me.
Well, and so you mentioned the beginning of your answer. It sounded like that there's he's and Annacone has sort of gradually made some changes, and to me it's more like, is it really changes that Fed's never ever done before, or is Paul been able to kind of convince him, you know what, you got to go back to what you did when you came out on tour? And we all look at that quarterfinal match between Roger and Pete, when, what was that, 2004 at Wimbledon, and
I think it was 2001 actually.
Okay, that's right, 2001, and I mean, is really what Annacone's doing, is he really sort of convincing and kind of selling Fed on, look, you know what, we got to go back a little bit to what you used to do, and
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, not just going back, but going forward too, Brent. I mean, if you look at his losses over the last few years to Rafa, and then you look at how Federer played Djokovic this year. I mean, Federer said time and time again that the Australian Open semifinal, that he was close to winning that match. To me, and I broadcast that match, I thought that even though he dropped a set, I thought Novak was in control of that match the entire time. That when he was playing well, he was doing the dictating, that he could stay with Federer now on the forehand side, which he wasn't able to do so much a few years ago, and that he could overmatch him on the backhand side. And that because Roger was so stubborn and consistently playing from the backcourt, and that's the same thing against Nadal, that he wouldn't go in, say, another 4 or 5 times a set. He doesn't have to become a serving volleyer, right?
Right.
He doesn't have to win 30 points in that set. All he needs to do is win a few more important points, and then he wins those matches. I mean, look at the U.S. Open final. He had 2 match points against Novak. Had he won a few more in that set, maybe it's a different result. And, I mean, Roger's smart. They're all kind of stubborn. I think we all know that. Most great champions towards the end of their career can be stubborn to the point where they think, I can still win the same way I was winning.
Right.
But the smarter ones, and I think that includes Sampras and certainly with Federer, know that they just have to make a couple more steps to improve. And I do think, I mean, you read his comments out of London, and Roger said it. He said, my backhand has improved. He said the reason why Novak got better this year is because his forehand is much more dependable. So, I mean, they may not be extremely complicated things, but it's the little important things in the game that can make all the difference in the majors when you play the other guys tough.
One of our listeners, Sam, has got a question for you, Matt. And I guess there was an article at Yahoo Sports a couple weeks ago where the great Rod Laver predicted that, that Fed's going to continue to win some more Grand Slams, and based on a couple things. Number one is that he's serving better. I mean, Laver thought that Federer was serving better now. He's coming to net, as you said, more often. But I mean, he's not going to pure serve and volley. But he is coming to net more often. But he's also, and I don't know if this shot he really had when he was younger, but he's certainly added the drop shot. Did you see that article? And, if so, what do you think about it? And if not, what do you think about Laver's comments there?
I did. I read Laver's comments, yeah. I think the guy, I was starting with the drop shot. I think he's always had the drop shot. I think he's stubborn to use it. I mean, it can be, for some guys, somewhat of a risky play. And Andre Agassi used to consistently say that anytime you saw him drop shotting, he thought it would be a bailout for him, that he didn't really believe in it. Right. I do agree with Laver that Roger believes in the shot more. And what he did say, and which I didn't say, and I fundamentally believe, and I'm not sure what happened, but I do think for large portions of the last 2 years that Federer has not been serving that well. And I'm not talking about blowing serves by people. He just wasn't hitting his spots. So whether it's him just going back to the drawing board, whether it's Paul or something else, he's holding easier now than he used to. And that also makes a much better difference. And he's serving well in the clutch. Right. So I don't know about multiple slams for Roger. I really don't. But now at least going into next year, you have to say that in good health, and he's been, possibly the healthiest great player of all time. I mean, the guy's never had one major. He's had some niggling injuries like back, and he had the mono and all that. But he's never had major injuries. I think you got to give him at least a shot at another 2 slams before he retires. And right. 18 would be a huge effort. Huge.
Well, so Mark asks, with Rafa seemingly shaken mentally, and Novak, having to defend so many points next year, and this is actually a great question. Can Roger actually make a run at number 1?
Oh, well, with the amount of points that Novak has to defend next year, anyone can make a number 1, right? I mean, he's defending, he has to defend Australia, he's defending Dubai, he's defending New Wells, he's defending Miami, he's defending, Madrid, he's defending Roland Garros semis, Wimbledon. Yeah, but I mean, it's not like Roger had awful results last year, so he's also going to have to play well. He was Aussie Open semi, so yes, he could get back to number one, and that is clearly too important to him. But I mean, really, he's basically what he has to do now is he's got to take the big step, and he's got to beat Nadal, and he's got to beat Djokovic at the majors. And I know that, Rafa looks tired. He played some bad matches this fall, but, flip it back. The guy won Roland Garros. He did reach the Wimbledon final, and he did reach the U.S. Open final. So he's not an out-and-out disaster. And to me, him too, Brent, and I'm sure you've seen this, and I've written it plenty. If the guy can just maybe hit 2 feet over the service line with his backhand once in a while, and not set up for the mid-court ball, if he can get some depth off the backhand again, I think he'll be in very good shape to make another charge himself. But that shot, that wing has absolutely killed him against Djokovic this year. Just killed him. Let alone that another, he can't hit backhand down the line either. I mean, Rafa's predictably going cross-court with his backhand so many times. Almost every single time out, you can just lay in on that shot.
Dexter's asking you, Matt, about Rafa. What's your take on the rather unbelievable thrashing Fed handed Rafa at the World Tour Finals? Let me see if I want to get the whole thing in here. Always a combination, I know, but more of a function of Fed's great player, Rafa not feeling his best, being burnt out, etc. I, for one, was shocked, happily shocked, I might add, by that result.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted and wrote it. I was totally stunned, too. I actually watched it on tape delay a little while back because it was out during the match. But I didn't think Rafa played well at all. I thought Federer played extremely well, but that's not the Nadal we know. I mean, look, the guy's had Federer's number for a long, long time now. And I know part of that has to do with surface, but he's never suffered such a beatdown to Roger before. I mean, I think he's definitively lacking confidence. He's not playing aggressive enough. He's not moving that well. He himself is not serving well. The second serve has been soft. I mean, he's not really yanking anyone around with the forehand. He needs to rest. I mean, I do think, look, he gets back on clay, and if he, will beat Juan Monaco tomorrow in Davis Cup tomorrow, and then if he plays Del Potro and gets a good win over him on Sunday, I think that'll give him a good boost of confidence. But he said it, and his uncle and Coach Tony have said it. Those guys need a little bit of rest, and then they need to get back to the drawing boards. And he's got to take some leap with this game now, too, because who in creation thought, given his record against Djokovic coming into this year, that he'd lose to the guy in 6 finals? And that would take a mental toll on anybody.
So has anyone out there really figured out what Novak did other than with his big Davis Cup wins a year ago? I mean, was that real? I mean, we all know he went gluten-free, and that may have helped too. But is it really that much of a mental switch that when you flip it like that, as he did in Davis Cup year, where he just says, you know what, I know I can do it. I know I can beat these guys. I mean, is that kind of the talk of the tour, or was that the talk of the tour during 2011? That it's really just about belief. It's just a confidence thing, and it's so minute with those guys that I mean, I don't know, how do you articulate it? How do you quantify
Well,
it?
I would say, look, I think it's really, I've told the story a lot, but when it was 2010 Wimbledon, right, and Thomas Berdych beats Djokovic in the semifinals, and Djokovic did not play well in that match. And I go in, we're at a local pub late, feel someone tap me on the back, and with a friend of mine, turn around as Djokovic, want to buy you a beer. Just talk to him for a couple minutes, and he actually apologized for his play. He's like, that's not me. I just got to get some things settled. I just don't mentally feel right, but I'm going to settle some things mentally because I know he can play better. So what does he do? He kind of, I don't want to go into, minutes on this, but he reconstructs the family situation so the parents aren't always there,
Right,
and he's
right.
not always trying to please them. He settles his personal life with his girlfriend so they move in together so she trusts him more. He settles the coaching situation a bit. So he plays better at that U.S. Open. His coach tells him, look, Novak, You're a great defensive player, right? You played Rafa tough. You played Roger tough. You want to reach number one, you have to start taking cuts at the ball. And even if you make some errors, you have to play more offensive. He goes to Australia, and it's clear to me. Some people will say the forehand, was just as good in 2008. To me, that's total BS. I mean, you see him in Australia, the guy starts dictating off the forehand side. His backhand's always been world class. He's always been an extremely good defender. So his serve too. Remember that he had shoulder problems. Comes into 2011, the shoulder isn't hurting him that much. His serve does improve. He's holding a lot more easier. So then where do you go against the guy? He's suffocating people inside the court. He doesn't really have a weakness. And then, as you're saying, Brent, so if you firm up the serve and you firm up the forehand and he starts to believe in the offense, then he wins the extra 6 or 7 points during the set. Then he starts getting on a confidence roll. He thinks he can do anything in the world, and he literally takes over the tour for 9 months.
Right. I got a great question here from Terry. Curious about Jarko Tipsarevic and his glasses. And I think this is a serious question. I'll be honest with you. I started wearing sunglasses probably 6 months ago. First time ever. And primarily because I wanted to protect my eyes, and it was more about, it was more about that. It was more about eye protection, and it took me probably, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 times. That was it, getting out in the court and wearing them and getting used to them. And now, if it's a foggy day, I'm bummed out because I can't wear them. I guess I got to get some yellow lenses, but. What's the deal with his glasses? Is this is he got some kind of visual thing, or is it kind of like when guys wear hats where it sort of tunnels your vision? Any ideas?
No, I actually think I think, Brent, that I'm pretty sure they're prescription.
Okay, all right.
So they're both eyeglasses and sunglasses.
Right.
So and it works well both ways. There aren't that many guys who do it, but I mean, for him, and he's had the best year of his career. He even got to play the 1 or 2 matches in the ATP finals because he was the alternate. But yeah, I think for some recreational players who have, and you obviously play far more than I do, but when there are sun problems, if you can make the adjustment and wear the sunglasses, or just find something that's comfortable, and his are almost like goggles, Brent.
Right.
If they don't fog up, it's a very good option.
Right. Okay. All right, here's another question, Matt. Do you see the prototype player being, on average, 6'5", 210 pounds, and anyone shorter is going to be at a disadvantage? And second part of this question is do you think Isner has a shot to break into the top 5 by the end of 2012?
Top 5, I'd be surprised, but Jim Courier was on a conference call I was on today, and he thinks top 10, and I actually thought he had a shot at top 10 going in this year, and then he just came into the season out of shape, and then he lost his confidence, but he did a really, really good job from after having a disastrous Wimbledon. Actually, he had a disastrous January through the end of Wimbledon stretch where I think he reached 1 or 2 quarterfinals, and they were both small tournaments. So he put the work back in. I think he's had a little more variety. But top 5, which means real slam contender? I mean, guy's got the biggest serve in the game, and it's, as Courier said today, it's one of the biggest weapons in the game because he can pretty much hit it past anybody. His forehand's pretty big. His volley isn't bad when he gets up to net, but because, Brent, I think he's a little slow of foot, the transition game, and you're the serve and volley. The transition game quite isn't there yet, but at least he's trying to come in more. His backhand's actually improved a little bit too. Won't hit it for too many winners, but some. So if he stays the course, I see top 10. But can he win a slam? I mean, let's not forget that when Juan Martín del Potro won the 2009 U.S. Open, that he was the first man 6'6" and over to win a major. So can a guy 4 inches taller than that win it? I don't know.
Right.
But I would say that every single generation, players bigger, faster, stronger for sure. But it's not, Federer's 6 feet tall. Nadal's what, 6'1", 6'2". Djokovic is over 6. A lot of the girls are getting taller too. But I wouldn't count someone 5'10" or 5'11" completely out of it yet.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in all athletics, I think you're seeing that trend, right? Kids just keep getting bigger.
Absolutely. Well, I think in Isner's case, I mean, he's never, ever going to, I mean, he can get a little bit faster, but he's never, ever going to be a speed burner out there. And so really he's going to have to rely on that serve. And to me, it's going to have to be about, I mean, I think, isn't he in, the Croat, who's the other tall guy?
Cilic?
No, the
Cilic.
No, the lefty.
Ivanisevic.
Yeah.
Goran Ivanisevic.
Well, no. The guy who got, I think he got to the finals, or he lost to Rafa this year at Indian Wells in the semis or something. He had to.
Oh, Ljubicic.
Karlovic.
Oh, Karlovic. He's not a lefty. Yeah, Karlovic's right. He's another guy. He's another. Isner's 6'9", I guess, or 6'9.5", and Karlovic is 6'10". Right.
And Karlovic is a righty.
I mean, he's never getting to his.
Right.
He's never gone very deep at the slams either.
Right. So that to me is.
But he's a different player though, Brent. I mean, the guy can only hit a slice backhand, and I think he's actually slower than John.
Right. So I guess my point is that Isner is going to have to somehow just win. He's just going to have to never, and I guess he never does get broken. I mean, he holds serve as much as anyone. So, the thing is how is he going to return serve a little bit better and get a free point now and then off a return. So, guys, any more questions? I've got a few more questions here kind of lined up for Matt. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and type them into your GoToWebinar control panel question box there. Matt, anything that's on your mind that you see? Any prediction for 2012, either on the men's side or the women's side? We haven't talked about the gals and all, and I know that you do spend a lot of time tweeting about the women's tour and writing about the women's tour. Let's spend a couple of minutes actually talking about them. What do you think's the big story for the women's tour in 2012?
Chaos.
Yeah.
Okay. I just talked to today completely out of the blue for a few minutes was Maria Sharapova.
Oh,
and
okay.
She's got, sort of on our theme now, she's got some huge questions, in my opinion, to answer next year because, sort of like with Roger, which sort of stunned me with her, especially at the end of the year, Brent, is that, do you remember how she used to hit the swing volley out of the air consistently for winners?
Right.
The shot literally disappeared from her repertoire the second half of the year. And I fundamentally believe she lost to Flavia Pennetta in the third round of the U.S. Open. And Maria actually had a very good summer up until then. Had she kept that shot in the arsenal, she probably would have won that match and could have won the tournament because with her, she's a lot slower than Roger. And she doesn't have great feet, but you give her the ability to hit, say, 3 to 4 swing volley winners and just a few standard volley winners a match, and she wins a lot of the matches she lost this year. I've been following her closely for a long time. Her backing away from the net, allowing her opponents to get back into the point and then stretch her out and get on the defensive has really, really hurt her. And, with that said, she got back in the top 5 this year, right? Wins her first big clay court tournament at Rome, reaches the semis at Roland Garros, reaches the final at Wimbledon, wins Cincinnati. I mean, she had a real lot of positives there, but I was absolutely shocked at her regression just away from the net. Probably, Brent, and you teach this all the time. She gets up there, she misses a couple standard volleys, and sometimes you can forget her going up to the net for the rest of the tournament.
Right. Well, what about her serve?
And why? Yeah, well, the serve's another thing. But, I mean, maybe you can go on that topic because I'm sure you teach it. You've seen it. I've seen her in practice knock off 25 pretty tough volleys in a row. Then she gets into a match and she doesn't want to get near the net.
I just look at her service motion. I look at the technique and the mechanics, and there are some serves that just look absolutely dead perfect. I mean, there's you could take that serve and you could kind of carve it up into the 5 basic fundamentals of how to hit a a high quality serve, and they're all right there. And yet it's, some of it's got to be mental. I mean, to me, it's got to be,
You think?
well, mental in terms of,
You know what? Let me throw this at you though, because she's changed and it's been very small. Because let's not forget that she started with the new coaches here, Thomas Hogstead.
right,
She has changed her service motion, whether incrementally small ones and then gone back, I'd say at least 5 times in certain ways since her shoulder surgery in 2008. And one of the reasons why she's done this, Brent, is because there are still times when the shoulder hurts. So she's trying to find ways to stand and to toss to take the pressure off her shoulder.
right, right. Well,
So I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's led to some wild consistencies.
well, you got to cut her some slack on that then. I mean, if she's really trying to avoid some pain, then yeah, I mean, you could see where even if the stroke mechanics will look good, I mean, I guess my point mentally is that she just doesn't trust it, and
No, she doesn't trust it. And I think what's also really hurt her is she hits the flat serve pretty well. Okay, her service speed, actually, her first service speed is not much different than it was pre-shoulder surgery. Her second serve, though, which she goes for a lot. I mean, people forget that when she double faults, she's not trying to plop it in the mid 70s. She's going for mid, sometimes high 90s. She's told me that there are times when she cannot feel the ball when she's trying to hit kick serve because of the shoulder and the hand.
right,
So
right,
you'll see her missing kick serves. She'll miss kick serves long a lot, which, you shouldn't be doing that much if you can really feel the ball.
right.
But I actually think she can almost junk the kick serve and just kind of go for semi-slice. Because Brent, you hit the serve better than a lot of people. If you can't feel the spin on the racket, should you really be trying to hit kicker? I don't know.
Well, I mean, we talk about a kicker with her. She doesn't really have a Sam Stosur kicker, and yet she's tall enough, and I think she's got the right stroke mechanics where she could really get a nice, more of a real tight spin kind of rainbow shape that would just, bounce, out of, especially on that ad side. I mean, she ought to be taking these girls and just putting them into the grandstands over there, and getting a forehand that she can just unload on. But I just don't see that type of mindset. Because I just don't think she trusts it's going to happen. But again, like you say, if she's got problems, if it's still hurting, then you gotta cut her some slack on that. Let me ask you one more question here, and I think we're starting to run out of time. I promised you 30 minutes, and you're nice to stay with us this long, Matt. Talk about, I've got a question here about Fed's mentality and his sort of mental toughness. What is it that is going to get him over the hump with Rafa on, let's say, clay? Because I just still think that Fed's got the ability in terms of strokes to be able to hang in there with Rafa on clay, but mentally, you just feel like there's something that Rafa does, or there's some kind of aura about Rafa on clay, especially at the French, that not only gets all the other guys but also gets Fed.
Brent, I do not see him beating him at Roland Garros. Now, if you go 2 out of 3 sets, maybe Madrid and high altitude where it's a little faster, maybe. But, Philippe Chartrier Stadium, which is Court Central at Roland Garros, is not that slow of a court. I just think Rafa's got too many tools for him because, essentially what you're doing is you're taking away to a degree the serve of Federer, which matters a lot, right? Rafa's ball bounces up so high and it's so heavy on clay to Federer's backhand. Even if we go back to what we were talking about before, the ability of Roger now to take him more on the rise, it's still not going to be that easy on clay. Rafa moves much better on clay. His defense is remarkable. When he's on, it's so hard to hit through him on that surface.
Right.
I know that Soderling did it the one year, but Rafa was not healthy in that match, right? All credit to Soderling, but Nadal was not completely healthy. I just think really that it's just like if you look, Roger's A game indoors is better than Rafa's, and Rafa's A game on clay is just better than Roger's. I I don't see it doing it. I think that ship has sailed unless Nadal plays a terrible match or he's unhealthy.
And okay, final question. Joe Willie Songa. I mean, it seems like he's made a move this year. In your mind, what's happened in terms of that, and what do you see from him in 2012?
Well, the great thing about Sangha, I thought this year was that at least from, well, actually I should say at least from the French Open on, where he played consistently better. He wasn't in and out of tournaments. He was pretty much a force for most of the season. He upsets Federer there, and then Roger gets him a couple times in the fall. I think the serve is great. It's a huge weapon. He's got a lot of confidence in it. You can tell he believes he can hit it in the clutch. His forehand is also very big. He actually has good touch for a big man. He moves well for a big man. Don't like the return game still, Brent. I mean, it's better. Not in love with the backhand, but that's also gotten better. I think what we were talking about with Djokovic, for Joe, it's more a matter of self-belief than anything else. And look, let's not forget that 2008, when he just crushed Ruff in the Aussie Open semis, then ends up losing to Novak, he was the guy everyone was pointing to and saying, top 5 forever, right? Top 5 for 10 years. He's got enough games. Then he gets injured a lot. He's mentally in and out. Then kind of Del Potro surpasses him, and he's another guy we have to sort of watch for next year. What I want to see, Brent, Tsonga has gone without a coach now since Wimbledon, and he's made a lot of progress. So right. What does he do next year? Does he get some guy that he trusts to kind of help him out, or does he just kind of wing it like Roger did for periods by himself? I don't know. But, he's an enthusiastic guy. He's a nice guy. He's fun to watch. I'd love to see him consistently in the mix with the majors. I think a lot of people would.
It's my middle daughter calling in. Well, listen, hey, Matt, thanks so much for your time today, and I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy out there, and hoping that we can get on or get you on again. And guys, really appreciate you spending some time with us today. I did not get to every one of your questions. I apologize for that. But a couple things here. You can leave your question if we didn't get to it over at the webtennis.com blog. I've got a post up there. It's the most recent post. You can go in there and leave me your question there, and I'll have Matt kind of go in there maybe tonight or tomorrow and spend a little time and just answer a few questions. And then I really want to get your feedback. I want to know, what you like about the webcast, what you don't like about it, what topics, what special guests you'd like to see in the future. So for now, hey, Matt, thanks again, man. I appreciate your time today.
No worries, Brent. Anytime. Always fun to do it with you.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks very much. Have a great day out there, and we will talk again soon.